Okay, hello everyone, and welcome back to Dead Island technically, but we're going to be doing another tier list here, and this one is going to be of all of the Dead Island games. This is technically a Dead Island and Dying Light tier list. However, I haven't played Dying Light on the channel yet. I say yet, like I will. Potentially in the far future, perhaps I'll play Dying Light. I have 100%, well, not 100%ed, but I have played Dying Light, completed all the main quests, finished all the side quests. I've explored most of what Dying Light has to offer, so I'm not inexperienced with the game, but at the same time, this is purely going to be a Dead Island Games tier list, and we're going to be going through them one by one, and giving my thoughts, and obviously this is my own personal opinions on the games. Your opinions will vary. They definitely will for some people. Other people, you might agree with me on all of these, but I highly doubt it. And of course, I will leave a link to this tier list in the description. If you do make your own tier list of these games, feel free to share a picture of your tier list in the Discord, or tweet it to me on Twitter or something. X. And yeah, let's get into it. So, first of all, the original Dead Island. It's going to be an S tier for me, because personally, I like this game the best. Even after all of the other games that have come out, I still enjoy Dead Island the most. The original Dead Island. The most. That's my go-to Dead Island game. It's the first game of the series that I played. I played it on the PS3, probably about when it came out. I think I got it for like a birthday or Christmas, I think. And then I got the PC version in a Yogscast Jingle Jam by buying one of the game from buying one of the game bundles from Humble Bundle for one of the Jingle Jams. I got Dead Island and Riptide in it, I believe. And yeah, I played it on PC, and that's where I've played it ever since, really. And yeah, it's just my favourite game. It's got the most in it. It introduces all of the major staples of the games. The zombies, the quests, the general aesthetic, the UI. The heroes that we all know and love. A lot of just such memorable moments. And obviously all of the weapons, all of the mods, the throwables, the maps, the locations, the pacing, the story, but you can generally follow the story well enough, kind of. Once you actually get deep into the lore, is when it starts obviously becoming a bit more confusing. But for playing the game first time, understanding the quest and what you're doing, it's really quite simple. You're just a group of 4 immunes. You're stuck on Banoi. You don't want to be on Banoi, so you start helping people. You contact a guy on the radio. He says he can help get you off the island. You follow his instructions, get a cure, go to where he says he can take you from, which is the prison. So you go through all of the hoops to get to the prison, and then you escape from the prison. It's really that simple when you break it down. And yeah, it's my favourite game of the franchise. Riptide, it's an A for me. It's definitely good. It is probably my second favourite game in the series. I do like Riptide. However, there are more problems with it for me than there are with the original game. Obviously, the original game isn't perfect. Neither is Riptide. I know a lot of people like Riptide more than the original game, especially in sort of like the Dead Island fan Discord server, and even in the official server as well. There's people that like Riptide more than they do the original game, and that's fair enough. I can understand why, but for me personally, I don't like it as much. The new zombies that they introduced just weren't as interesting as the new, definitely not as balanced either, I don't think, than the original zombies in Dead Island. Most of the new zombies that we got were just reskins with some slight changes. For example, mutated scientists are just walkers but with some fire resistance. Drowners are just infected but in water, and they have some other separate little abilities. But yeah, not really too much different there. And then some other minor random little random zombies here and there. But in general, the new zombies weren't as great. The pacing of the game, it's very much it's very much you spend half the time in the jungle, which gets boring real fast. The pacing of the game is sort of, it throws you in at the deep end, where the original game had each new zombie type being introduced in a new section of the map, so you weren't suddenly overwhelmed with all of these zombies, all of the difficult zombies at least, when you still had rubbish weapons and not many mods, whereas Riptide, you can easily meet a butcher within like 10 minutes of gameplay, which when you have no good weapons is not fun at all. They generally reduced health and stamina of the heroes. There's far less quests in the game, far less NPCs, which makes the game feel a lot less lived in. Really, there's very few survivors actually in the maps when you get down to it. Like in the flooded jungle, excluding your little group which goes around areas, there's only one safe zone. One actually lived-in safe zone with loads of people. There's a couple of other like random ones dotted around the map which just have one NPC in them. But in terms of actual main, like, the survivor bases, safe zones, there's only one in the flooded jungle. There's, well, technically two in Henderson. However, one of them, there's only one person living there until your group turns up there, and then when your group leaves, again, it's just them left. So, kind of, there's only one real survivor base safe zone in Henderson, which for a big town like Henderson you'd expect there to be more, but I digress. There's not many new weapons, there's not really that many new mods, and the mods that they do add, kind of terrible. They're AoE mods, which I still don't understand how they work. But yeah, far less quests in the game, by I think a factor of about 100 or something. Which is a lot less content. There's some good things that come from Riptide, I'm not going to lie. There's several new weapons which are really good. The staff that they added is really good. The sniper rifle is really good. The new locations are rather copy-pasted using assets from the original game. However, Henderson is really pretty to look at. And the vibe of the Japanese tunnels is really good. The dead zones are a fun addition. They're not necessarily all that important. You can easily go through the game without ever going into one. But you know, they're fun little side areas that are in there. Some of the new mods are good, like the Diamond Edged mod, and various a couple of other random mods as well in there, which are nice. But yeah, I just don't like it as much, because it's just a lot harder to start out in the game compared to the original game. The pacing's worse, the story is shorter, there's less to do, and generally the new zombies and the placement of those new zombies is kind of I just don't like it. And that's why I'm putting it in A tier. Obviously some people, it'll be the other way around, or maybe even Dead Island will be like down here somewhere, but for me, Riptide's an A tier rather than an S tier. Escape Dead Island, it's going to be B tier, I think. It's interesting as a Dead Island game. It's the first game that came out after Riptide and the original game. It came out after that, but before Dead Island 2 was meant to come out, like the original Dead Island 2, I should say, the 2014 trailer that we saw in E3 with some random gameplay that you can find on YouTube. That Dead Island 2. Escape came out, and Dead Island 2 was meant to link Escape up with that game, with Escape acting as sort of like a bridge between the ending of Riptide and the start of Dead Island 2. It was meant to be sort of like that bridge which would explain Escape and make it canon and tie it in, because at the moment Escape, and it forever will be, just sort of out in the void almost. It's not canon according to Deep Silver. The only canon games in the franchise is Dead Island, Riptide and Dead Island 2. These other ones are all completely non-canon, which includes Escape, which is kind of a shame actually, because Escape introduced a lot of good lore, which is one of the good things about Escape. But anyway, what is Escape? It is a third-person, cel-shaded stealth game, is probably the best way I'd put it. The cel-shaded art style is fun. I don't mind the art style. I quite like cel-shaded art style. It does make the game look bad at areas which would probably benefit more from being in a more realistic art style like the first two games, especially on something like the mountaintop where you've got this perfect view of Narapella, but you can't really see it all that well because of the cel-shaded art style, making it all very fuzzy and blurry as it goes away, which is kind of a shame. But in general, the art style works. It's very comic booky, especially with sort of like the noises that come up. Sort of like when you stab a zombie, it'll say like "splat" or something, which is kind of cheesy, but it's also kind of works with the art style and sort of with the game as well, because the game is very not quite like non-linear. It's a very linear game. But it's a very departed game from what we're used to. There's no quests in the game. There's missions, but there's no side quests. There's no NPCs to talk to. I mean, there are NPCs, but only in like cutscenes, or in just general movement areas, not like actual gameplay areas, if that makes sense. Not areas that you're fighting zombies. That's how I should put it. When it gets to areas that you're actually fighting zombies in, there's no NPCs. And if there are NPCs, you can't reach them, and therefore the zombies also can't reach you. So, but yeah, it's very much a sort of stealth game. There's lots of stealth mechanics. You can sneak around zombies. They have like a noise detection exclamation mark bar above their head, which will go up if you're in range or if you're making too much noise. And it can be fun to sneak around zombies, plan your route, sort of plan picking off zombies. You'd have like a stealth weapon which can kill them. You have either a screwdriver or an army knife. There are normal fighting mechanics, like normal melee mechanics, but they're not good, and your character's not good. I hate Cliff as a protagonist. I just hate him. It makes me want to throw him to the zombies rather than save him from the zombies, I'll put it that much. But yeah, the weapons, there's no weapon modding, there's no mods. The collectibles are fun. The lore is great. It's fun to have one playthrough of it. 2, if you want to experience the New Game Plus stuff, which there is special New Game Plus stuff, so it is worth doing. The story is convoluted, weird, and not great, I'm going to be honest. It gets very confusing if it's like your first time playing. It can get very confusing with Cliff's hallucinations and figuring out what's real, what isn't, and the whole thing's in a time loop. So where the end of the game happens, the credits roll, and the game starts again as a time loop. Except Cliff will have his damaged clothes on at the start of the time loop, which is just a weird thing, but if you quit to the menu and load back in, I think he gets his undamaged clothes back, which is kind of a weird little glitch there, but yeah. It's worth trying out. If you can get it on sale, and give it a try, because it's definitely worth a playthrough. Find some of the collectibles, read some of the collectibles maybe. There's like 5 different types of collectibles. The Underwater Labs is strange, but it gives the most overpowered weapon in all of Dead Island history, I'd say, which is the assault rifle, not the auto rifle, assault rifle, which is just incredibly powerful and shreds through everything, basically. And yeah, so it's worth it to try, but there's definitely issues with it. There's various glitches which I have documented and put on the wiki under the glitches page. But yeah, it's worth trying out, I'd say. Definitely worth trying. Epidemic is a game that you can't try anymore because it's been shut down since 2015. It was an arena MMO, yeah, or MOBA. That's what they called it. A MOBA, massively online battle arena, I think that stands for. And yeah, it's basically just a top-down, typical four-player arena-style shooter, very much in the same as League of Legends, I guess. Um, I guess that'd be a fine parallel for how it looks. But yeah, it's basically just a top-down thing. There's various objectives on various maps you have to do, like gather supplies, kill zombies. There's a PvP mode, and I did play some of it. It was in closed beta, and then it went to open beta, and then it got shut down, which is kind of a shame. I'm going to be honest, because a lot of the weapons that are in this game, I think, would be amazing in a traditional Dead Island game, which is a first-person game in the same vein as what we got with Dead Island Riptide, Dead Island, and Dead Island 2. However, it wasn't what we needed at the time for Dead Island, and a lot of people didn't gel with it, and it wasn't what people were looking for from a new game in the franchise, especially after the beginning of the hiatus with Dead Island 2, and not knowing if that was coming or going, and not having much information on it. And it wasn't what we needed, and it got shut down very sadly. I think there's a attempt ongoing to try and get it relaunched with fan servers and stuff, which I don't know if that's ever happened or if it's still being worked on or how much of a following that's gotten. But yeah, it was definitely interesting, and the games the ideas that they had in there was fine. The characters were alright, rather cartoony, rather not jolly, but rather comical, cartoony. Not very. It was stylized as well. It was a very stylized game, and it wasn't sort of like the gritty, more realistic style that we've had of these games. But yeah, the weapons that were in it definitely would have been amazing if they appeared in any of these traditional games. And I mean, who knows, in the future maybe I can pay a modder to try and mod them and put them in Dead Island as a mod or something. That'd be crazy. But yeah, the weapons in the game were amazing. I'm going to be honest. And the best thing about the game, but yeah, because it's shut down, it wasn't what we wanted. I'm going to put it in B tier. I don't know if it goes in C tier or not. But I'm going to put these two in at the same time, which is the definitive editions. And what the definitive editions are is they are HD remasters of the original games, of Dead Island and of Dead Island Riptide. And I'll be honest, I quite like them. Lots of people don't, because some people see them as a downgrade. And I don't know where to put Riptide in this. Possibly in there with Riptide again. But yeah, so what they are is they're HD remasters. They're on I think, different game engine. They have an overhauled lighting engine. They have a bunch of other things in there as well, including quality of life changes, a lot of which were brought over from Riptide. I will say that much. Riptide did a really good thing with quality of life changes in terms of how inventory worked and how vehicle damage worked as well, which was greatly beneficial. If you remember in our playthrough of Dead Island, You can't have throwables, and well, you can't have too many throwables because then you run out of weapon space. The same with alcohol. If you have alcohol, that's an entire weapon slot taken up. Riptide made these an entirely separate category that's limitless. So you can have as many throwables and as much alcohol as you want on your person, and it won't eat into your inventory space. All 18 slots can be used for weapons or firearms. And that's a really good thing that they brought over from Riptide to the remasters, the definitive editions. And generally, the games look great. Personally, well, at least my personal feelings on it is that the remasters look amazing. Most of the time, I will play the remasters over the originals, just because of the lighting engine and the new look. However, something that I didn't like is that because Techland did these, instead of remastering the weapons and making entirely new models for them, what they did is that they took the Dying Light models for these weapons and put them into the game as those weapons, even when clearly they're not like those. Some of them fit great. Like the makeshift sword, I think it is, from Dying Light, fits perfectly as the makeshift machete. Or homemade machete in the definitive edition. However, the firearms are not as good. They're using the Dying Light firearm models, which I don't like. Going to be honest, like the rifles the rifles look better in the original games compared to the definitive editions. And also, like the big baseball bat is now a cricket bat, which is kind of silly because the cricket bat exists as a cricket bat in Dying Light, but the cricket bat obviously didn't appear in the original games. But for some reason they're just using it as a skin for the big baseball bat, which I'm not too sure how I feel on that, but it's interesting to have, I suppose. But then, yeah, some of the assets have also been taken from Dying Light besides the weapons. But in general, though, I like the games as the remasters. It did introduce some other glitches as well, especially breaking some things that were originally fixed. Like, for example, Banoi Herald number 33 is impossible to collect from, or rather in the definitive edition, when it was able to be collected in the original game. They've put it in an inaccessible location in the definitive edition, which means that you can't get a Banoi Herald 33. Strange how they've done that, but yeah, that's how that works. Retro Revenge, it's going to be a D tier. Yeah, Retro Revenge is not good as a Dead Island game. It came out alongside the definitive editions, and if you bought the definitive collection, you got it as like a free game. However, you can also buy it separately. What it is, it's a side-scroller, like 8-bit, 16-bit style arcade, like shoot-'em-up, where you've got 3 lanes. You've got 3 lanes. Your character's on the left, and there's 3 lanes, and zombies come from the right side down the lanes, and you either attack them or dodge out the way of the lanes. And there's various power-ups and things that you can use, and it's high-score based entirely. There's 3 worlds. Yes, they are called worlds. There's 3 worlds and 8 levels in each world, and it follows the typical naming scheme of just going World 1-1, World 1-3, World 2-5. It follows that naming scheme, and at the end of each world you get a cutscene, which is partially animated, partially not animated. Very much sort of in the vein of Black Ops 4's cutscenes for zombie mode, if you think of it that way. But yeah, there's some animation in there, but basically at the end of each world you get, well, at the end of World 1 and at the end of World 2 you get this cutscene which continues the story, and it gives you a new special weapon and a new magic power, which you can only use one of at a time anyway, so you basically get to choose between which power-up you want to use at the start of each level. And yeah, it's basically just repetitive, difficult, annoying, stupid levels against enemies that nobody likes. That's how it works. You can do combo scores and stuff, and there's score multipliers and all of this stuff, and random a couple of little drops and power-ups that you can collect, like the sledgehammer, the electric machete. You can get a score multiplier, you can get an extra life, these sorts of things. But yeah, in general, the levels are incredibly repetitive. They're pretty lengthy for what they are. They're pretty difficult in general, and the game's generally just really boring and terrible and not fun. It also was. It sort of released at a time where I think people were still thinking about Dead Island 2 as it was in the 2014 release. There was still somewhat hype and like coverage about it, which made Retro Revenge in the style of Dead Island 2. It was meant to be sort of like a prequel or something to Dead Island 2, because the main character you're playing as is Max, the Jack Black lookalike, with the Jack Black impersonator voicing him, which appeared in the trailer driving the van. We all remember the Pigeon John music accompanied trailer for Dead Island 2, which had the van rock up at the end, and you heard the Jack Black impersonator talking. His character's called Max, and Max is the main character, and basically the entire story is Max trying to rescue his pet cat, Rick Furry. That's the story. His pet has been kidnapped, it's a zombie apocalypse, Max is too busy playing video games, his cat gets kidnapped, he goes off to find his cat. That's the entire plot of the game. And it could have been part of a tie-in that would link to Dead Island 2 had it released. But yeah, in general, it's not a very good game. Talking of not a very good game, Dead Island Survivors, that's going in there. It's a mobile game, first of all. It's the only Dead Island mobile game we've got, and it's sort of like one of those weird hybrid tower defense games where you are able to control a character and directly attack the enemies, and they'll also attack you, but they also travel along a set path which you can make longer using walls, and you can place turrets which will automatically attack them along the way. The names of these sorts of games elude me. I just remember the Yogscast doing a really old playthrough of one way back in the day, which actually had them in the game, but I can't remember what that game was called. But it's one of those games. You can look up gameplay of it. It has voice acting for Sam B and Xian Mei from the gameplay that I've watched, but they're obviously not the original character voice actors, and they sound nothing like them. The game's highly stylized. It's not a traditional sort of zombie game. It's very much tower defense. Place your towers, let the zombies come, you can attack the zombies as they come, etc, etc. It's just not very good. I have tried to get the game running on BlueStacks, because the game has been removed from all the app stores, so you can't actually buy it and download it now. And I did try and get it working on BlueStacks, and I did manage to launch it, but every time I launch it, it just says you do not own this game, and it crashes BlueStacks. So yeah, if somebody manages to somehow get that working, I'd love to play it at some point and give it a try. But just to see what it's like and actually put something about it on the wiki, because at the current time, the wiki's coverage of Survivors is a main page for the game, and that's it. And even the main page hasn't got a lot of info, because I think I'm the only person to have ever edited that page. So, yeah, no information is on this game on the wiki, and I'd love to put some more info on it on the wiki. But yeah, it's not a very good looking game. It doesn't look very good. It doesn't look like it plays very good. It looks kind of boring, and it looks kind of terrible. But we move on to the last game, the most recent game, Dead Island 2, which isn't a sentence I think I would ever be saying 2 years ago. But yeah, I'm going to put it in A tier, I think. There are some things that I don't like about the game, but in general it's a mighty fine game. I probably like it more than Riptide. Actually, that's quite a stretch. I'm not sure about that. Although I have played a lot of it. And I like the game. here's what was going on with my thought process between Dead Island 2 being announced and Dead Island 2 being released. Um, so I was never happy with the idea of going to America and having the game set in LA, set in California. I didn't like that idea. I would prefer it have. Let me start that again. I would have preferred it if they kept the games set on an island. The games are called Dead Island after all. That's the franchise. But yeah, so I wasn't very happy with the fact that Dead Island 2 originally, in the trailer that we got in 2014 at E3, I didn't like that they were setting it in LA. Didn't like the fact that they were setting it in mainland America. I felt like that didn't fit the game. I was against that idea, and I was happy that the game wasn't coming out, mostly because of that. The gameplay looked generally fine, but I also didn't like the zombie redesigns, how they changed the thugs to be fast and the suiciders to be slow, and I thought that the character designs for at least those two special infected were really terrible. I hated the designs for those zombies. But yeah, so when Dead Island 2 was announced to finally be coming out under Dam Busters Studio, again, I was skeptical. I was skeptical about whether or not they were actually going to go through with it, whether this was just another one of those, hey, we're not dead yet, guys, sort of things. And yeah, I just wasn't sure about whether or not the game was legit coming out. But then they produced a trailer. I was alerted about it on the Total War Wiki Discord. And yeah, I was still skeptical. I watched the trailer. I still wasn't sure about it. I'm still unsure about the whole America setting. I didn't like it at first. But then more stuff started coming out about it. More gameplay started coming out, and I was like, okay, this is actually looking kind of alright. Maybe it's looking alright. I'm still, still unsure about some of the things about it. But then I got into contact with the Deep Silver community manager. I was talking to her. She was lovely. I got some free stuff out of it. I got some free stuff out of this wiki stuff after all. This whole wiki gig wasn't for nothing. I got some free goodies. I got the game for free, the gold edition, which I have to say thank you very much to I'd have to say thank you very much to Deep Silver and to the community manager, who went by the nickname of Gabby. Gabby was incredibly lovely, and then she stepped down, and we've now got somebody else who's equally as nice, but they're no replacement for Gabby, I have to say. But that's Deep Silver politics that I won't speak on anymore. But anyway, I digress. Yeah, I was skeptical about it, but then the game came out. I played it on my laptop at uni at about 5 frames per second for half the campaign, and I really enjoyed it. Even at that FPS, I still enjoyed playing the game. And then I got back here, and I was able to play it at a smoother frames per second. It's still nowhere near running great, even on minimum settings, but I can still play it on this computer. It runs mostly fine. And I was able to enjoy the game. I played through the House DLC. I played through that 100% on my laptop back at uni, which meant again struggling through at 5 frames per second. And yeah, I managed to get some fun glitches out of that nobody else has been able to reproduce, which is fun. But then Solar came out, and I played it here on my computer. And yeah, I played through much of the rest of the game on my computer, and I really enjoyed it. Quite honestly. The new zombies are fine. I like how they redid Screamers. Screamers are a lot nicer in this game. I'm not too sure on whether or not I like Crushers more than I do Thugs, or whether I like Slobbers more than I do Floaters. But for the most part, they're basically just rebranded, slightly tweaked versions of those, so I don't really care all too much. Some of the mutators are pretty terrible zombie. The boss fight at the end of the game was actually pretty easy, I have to say. People have struggled with it, but I did it first try. Not a weird flex, but I managed to do it with 2 nail guns and an out of ammo shotgun. and some curveballs. And you know, the game's fine. The multiple smaller maps instead of the several larger maps, I think work fine. I don't think they're any better or worse than the bigger maps of the original games. These two right here, I don't know if the smaller maps of this is any better or worse. It definitely makes traversing them a lot quicker, obviously. However, it can be annoying having to fast travel between multiple points for certain side quests, and even in main quests as well, having to travel through having to travel through like 3 or 4 even of these smaller maps, where it could have been only 1 or 2 big maps if they'd put them all as a couple of big maps rather than all these little ones. But yeah, in general, they're fine. The weapons I like mostly. There's very few weapons in the game that I actively dislike. They made brass knuckles a lot nicer to use, and I actually also use sledgehammers now. Sledgehammers are actually my go-to weapon, specifically the improvised hammer. I'm a big improvised hammer fan. So yeah, they rebalance the weapons fine. The perks are fine. I quite like the perks. The mods, however, I don't like the small selection of mods. It makes it a lot easier to choose which mod you're going to put on a weapon, because there's only varying rarities of mods, and there's only 6 different mods in the game. However, I can't lie if I said that I didn't try and recreate all of the old mods in the new game. For example, making a Tesla sledgehammer by putting an electrical mod on a sledgehammer, which actually sledgehammers can't do that. So yeah, instead, like a shock and crowbar mod, trying to recreate the shock and crowbar mod by putting an impactor mod on a crowbar. These sorts of things. Just because I am set in my original ways of Dead Island and Riptide. But generally, the weapons are fine. Mods, generally fine. The zombies, generally alright. The NPCs, some of them I do greatly dislike, but some of them I do like. The Slayers, which are the replacement for the heroes, generally I like all of them. I main Jacob. I've completed the game. I've nearly 100%ed the game with Jacob, and I have a bias towards Jacob because he is British. But yeah, all of the other Slayers, Danny, Bruno, Amy, Carla, who am I missing out of that? Ryan. They're all great Slayers. They all have their own quirks, their own personalities. Ryan is actually pretty faithful to the original Ryan found in the 2014 Dead Island 2, where the 2014 version Ryan was an actual, I think, volunteer firefighter. Dead Island 2's Ryan is a male stripper who strips as a fireman. So it's kind of cool how they've managed to get that in there. Possibly doing a disservice to the 2014 Ryan, but yeah, generally I enjoy the game. It's perhaps not the greatest game, however, the launch was pretty smooth. Very few people were finding bugs. There were some bugs, definitely, such as clipping through the maps, moon launch, zombies failing to spawn or spawning under the ground, which meant that you had to restart from a checkpoint because because you just couldn't complete the step that required you to kill a zombie, because the zombie spawned in a funny place so that you couldn't get to it. It spawned under the map. I've had that happen to me a couple of times. And then other sort of like texture glitches and various other things. But generally, Dead Island 2 had probably one of the smoothest AAA game launches in a while, which is pretty cool. And they have continued to update the game, fixing some bugs, doing some quality of life changes, adding DLCs, stuff like that. And generally, it's a fine game. I enjoy Dead Island 2. Obviously, I'm perhaps a bit biased because I didn't actually buy it. I got given it. Thank you again, Gabby and Dan Busters, and Deep Silver as a whole, for that. But even if I had bought it, I would have been very happy with this game. Yeah, it's really good. It doesn't hold quite the same nostalgia factor or the same drop in, kill some zombies, do some quests, drop out again like Dead Island. It's also missing some fundamental things such as New Game Plus. Everyone's been clamouring for New Game Plus since day one, and there's still no New Game Plus, which really kind of sucks, because if you've experienced the story once with one Slayer, you have 6 save slots, and ideally you want to have a save slot with each Slayer. However, if you want to replay the story as a separate Slayer, you have to delete that save file, all of your progress and everything. You've got to delete it and make a new save as that Slayer just to experience the story again, which, yeah, I'm not going to do that. So, yeah, that's kind of how that is. So, yeah, it kind of lacks the replayability of Dead Island. It's incredibly easy. It's a lot easier than any of the other games, at least any of the main games. It's missing regular rarity legendary weapons. So, for example, you have named legendaries in the game, which you get from quests. You can't get them anywhere else. You have to get them from quests. Or there's one which you can purchase in the Solar DLC. But otherwise, all of the legendary weapons you get from quests, and there's no regular rarity legendaries in the game, which is to say unnamed rarity legendaries. For example, in our Dead Island playthrough, I was finding, for example, a legendary, a legendary Canbo, let's say, or Cannabo rather, or even a legendary Hanabo. Hanbo. For example, I could find a legendary unnamed rarity Hanbo, and that's like the best of the unnamed weapons. You don't get that in Dead Island 2. The best you can get is purple rarity, which in this game is called superior rarity rather than very rare, which is what it is in Dead Island and Riptide. So yeah, you can only get superior rarity weapons as the best tier of weapons you can get, and they start dropping everywhere. Like, it's incredibly difficult for you to get a lower tier of rarity out of, for example, a disaster relief crates, which is a replacement for the metal chests, from merchants, which are called vendors in this game, from like quests, for example, zombie drops. All of these things will nearly guarantee dropping a purple rarity weapon, or they'll drop a blue one at like the worst. It's incredibly rare for you once you get past about player level 20 for you to get anything lower than purple or blue, which means that it's incredibly easy to get them, sell them, get loads of cash, keep the ones you want, and then you're set, because you can also upgrade your weapons to your current player level, which is really good. However, it means that once you've found like 8 weapons you like, you're basically set for the rest of the game, because there's really not much incentive to keep on searching and finding new weapons, because you can't get better rarity than purple. You can't get orange rarity weapons that aren't the legendaries, which you can easily get from just doing the side quests that give them out. So yeah, that's kind of a shame, and there are some problems with it, which is why I'm going to put it in A rather than S. But yeah, in general, I quite like Dead Island 2. I'm just going to say that much, and that is how my tier list is going to look. Nothing in C tier, however I think these fit D tier. So starting off, just one more run through. At S tier we have Dead Island and the definitive edition of Dead Island. In A tier we have Riptide, the definitive edition of Riptide, and Dead Island 2, 2023 edition. In B tier we have Escape and Epidemic. In C tier we have nothing. In D tier we have Retro Revenge and Dead Island Survivors, and Dying Light is down there, because I can't say anything on on Dying Light. Haven't played Dying Light 2, haven't played Bad Blood. I have played Dying Light on PC, and I do have it on Switch. Played it a bit on Switch as well. However, this is a Dead Island tier list for me, and for this channel. So I've rambled on enough, I think. So I will thank you for watching, and goodbye.